You know, first impressions really do count for a lot. Baldur's Gate 3 was my introduction to the series as a whole, which I know it was for a lot of people, and I was honestly really excited for it. I love Dungeons and Dragons, and the idea of making my own character and going on an adventure without having to wait for a DM who's preoccupied with selfish things like having their own life or needing to work was highly appealing, and the game didn't disappoint. It's one of the best I've played all this year, and I really enjoyed it from start to finish. There was just one problem though, and that's that the companion characters were, how do I put this delicately? They were hugely unlikable assholes at first. I actually messaged my friends and literally asked, am I actually supposed to like any of these people? They of course told me that the companions would grow in me, though they admitted it might take some time. And they did grow in me. I adore them now. But my god, did the first few leave a terrible first impression. Lae'zel tries to gut you and then spends the rest of the game being a prickly bitch. Shadowheart sneers at everyone and everything like an emo teenager. Astarion threatens you with a knife and then spends all of his time being a passive-aggressive asshole. And Gale's actually fine. He's largely pleasant even. It's just that I almost missed him on my first playthrough because I took a left at the fork in the road by the ship instead of a right, so I went to the Emerald Grove and didn't actually come back to find him until after I cleared out the goblin camp, and that's only because I was looking at my map and said, what's that spot? I thought I went there already. What's even funnier is that I also accidentally romanced him in the same playthrough because I'm dense as a fucking black hole and didn't realise he was flirting with me until after we initiated the romance scene. So I sort of just accidentally made my way into him like 5 times over. And the sad side effect of missing him at first was that I was largely stuck with 3 assholes who seemed to both hate my and each other's guts, and I just really didn't like any of them for the longest time. One of my friends actually said, wait until you meet Minthara, she's my favourite. And I asked, is she a massive bitch all the time for no reason too? And he said, yeah, kind of. But then I met Will, who, and I speak no hyperbole when I say this, has the single best character introduction of anyone in the game because he literally leaps into battle after blasting one goblin, kills another with a cheesy one-liner, and then you find him later teaching little baby tieflings to fight, and I was like, who the fuck is this stud? I want him on my team. And then he joins and he's great. And if you've played the game, you know his personal questline starts with him hunting down a one-horned devil for his patron. And that's where the subject of this video comes in. My absolute favourite character of the entire game, and the angry flaming love of my life, Karlach. Before I continue though, I do need to clarify a couple of things. This will be my first video in a series I'm tentatively calling Comprehending Companions, where I do character analysis of the Baldur's Gate 3 companions, and I do plan on at least doing one on each of the origin characters, the Dark Urge, and eventually a video on the Chosen of the Dead 3. However, because this is my first game in the series, I won't be doing solo videos on the legacy characters like Jaheira or Minsk, since they have a lot of history to unpack that I'm just not familiar with and not entirely equipped to deal with. I'm also going to be working with a good ending narrative, since I find that more interesting, and I just don't like let's watch them get worse storytelling. So that means no Dark Justiciar Shadowheart, no Ascendant Vampire Astarion, and I won't be doing any of the new evil endings. I'm sure you can find someone to analyse those for you, but they just do not appeal to me. And finally, I'll specifically be looking at them from their role as companions, not as player characters, for what I hope are self-evident reasons. Okay, on to the big buff lady. From the moment I met her, I knew I was going to like Karlach. You track her down and find her hunched over and swathed in hellfire. Will attempts to confront her, and the first thing she does is attempt to talk him down because she knows who he is and she really doesn't want to fight him. And it's not just because it would be difficult, but because she knows Will is a good man and she doesn't want to hurt him. Then she recruits you to help her fight off Zariel's minions, and you do, and she joins your party as a big beefy wall of sunshine and rage. Karlach is such a refreshing contrast to the first 3 companions you meet because she's just friendly. She gets along well with each of the other companions once you've convinced Will that she's not evil, and she honestly seems to fully appreciate them for who they are, taking a genuine interest in them and their interests and desires. Even Lae'zel and Shadowheart can hardly summon the will to be their usual bitchy selves when talking to her, and she's honestly just a genuine delight to have around. She's also incredibly protective of the party, willing to put herself between them and any threat, no matter how great. She's also kind of a lovable dork. randomly doing dances when you're standing still, fangirling over meeting Jaheira in Minsk, and even happily contemplating the idea of a book club with Gale. Karlach is a very straightforward and honest person, openly proclaiming her love of life and even joyfully belting out how much she loves the player if they tell her first, which is so fucking sweet, and it shouldn't be possible for a woman this big and buff to be so cute, but she's fucking adorable.
I adore you, you know. I love you too! Oh my god! I've been dying to say that. Oh my god, if I smile any bigger, my face is going to crack. Oh, I'm pathetic. Besotted. And it's all your fault. I guess we better get the day on. So much to do, so much to see. Together. Hey!
She's also a very moral person, and helping people, especially without asking anything in return, is the quickest way to earn her approval. Being kind to others and standing up for what's right are so important to her, to the point that if the player allows the Rite of Thorns to be completed, or sides with the goblins against the Grove, she will either leave the party or refuse to join you. Dealing favourably with villains in general will also earn her disapproval, especially in the case of Gartash, and dismissing or making light of her pain will piss her the fuck off. A lot of this is, however, balanced out by her darker side. Karlach is filled with an overwhelming rage and loneliness, brought about by Gortash's betrayal and the decade she spent trapped in the Hells, having her heart stolen, being forced to fight for her life every day, and having absolutely no friends to rely on. And the consequences of those events haunt her throughout the game. Karlach was born in Baldur's Gate, in a poor but happy family in the Outer Gate, and eventually, as she grew older, she was hired by Lord Gortash as a bodyguard, who she would come to deeply respect, not just for trusting her to protect him from the worst of the criminal and political circles he was running in, but for making her feel valued as well. This wasn't to last though, as Gortash sold her to the Archdevil Zariel to fund his plans to dominate the city. Before she could even process this betrayal, Karlach had her heart removed and replaced with an infernal engine, and was soon thrown into the fray of the Blood War. Ironically, despite the certain doom posed by Saramorphosis, being kidnapped by the Mind Flayers and being infected with a tadpole would actually gain Karlach her freedom, as well as her chance at revenge. Because while Zariel was untouchable and immortal, Gortash was still only human, and with you by her side, Karlach finally has everything she needs to slaughter the bastard that stole her heart and her life from her. You know, I actually find it very fitting that Karlach is a barbarian, not just because she's a big buff lady, but because she has every reason to be angry. Rage is the primary feature of the barbarian class, and while everyone flavours it differently when they make their own, I rarely see people explore the rage itself as a concept, like from an emotional standpoint. But the thing about Karlach is that she is angry, incredibly so, because she had her entire life stolen from her by the man she trusted and respected the most. Something I've noticed is that people tend to treat anger as if it's inherently negative and wholly destructive, but that's never been true of any emotion. Every emotion you feel exists for a reason, and anger primarily functions as a response to a perceived injustice. Anger is your brain's reaction to unfairness, and it's what you do with that anger that becomes good or bad. And the thing about Karlach is, while it would be honestly entirely understandable for her to lash out at the people around her, she doesn't. Karlach never takes her anger out in the party, with one notable exception that I'll get to in a little bit. For the entirety of the first and second act, Karlach's questline is wholly devoted to fixing her infernal engine, because despite being free of the Hells, the engine is still a source of pain and isolation. Karlach is so heartbreakingly, horrifically lonely. She literally cannot get too close to people for fear of harming them, and this is only compounded by the fact that she should be able to. She escaped Avernus. Life, a real life free of hell, should be what awaits her, but the ticking time bomb her abusers place in her chest keeps her from enjoying that. Karlach has been denied physical contact for 10 years, and even now she cannot kiss or hug or even really dance with others for fear of burning them. In Act 1, you're able to have Damon stabilize her engine enough that it won't immediately threaten her life, and you can even initiate a romantic relationship with her, but you still can't touch each other, and it's obvious that this fact fucking hurts her. Karlach is a very physical person. She revels in the simple joys in life, in dancing, in a cool breeze on her face, in experiencing everything she can. But even now, she's denied the simplest and most human joy of all, contact. The basic comfort of being touched. The absolutely broken joy in her voice when Damon fixes her engine the second time is some of the best voice acting I've ever heard. Samantha Bart is a fucking amazing actress.
Thank you. I can't believe it. Thank you, Damon. Thank you so much.
If you do not give Karlach a hug when she can finally touch someone, then we cannot be friends. This scene is so good because Karlach is finally given a reprieve. She can finally hug someone, kiss someone, she can finally have sex, and by all the gods in the fucking DMG, she fucking misses sex. But even this victory is tainted by the fact that this fix is only temporary. If Karlach doesn't return to Avernus, her engine will only get worse and eventually its fire will consume her. Karlach will die if she doesn't return to the Hells, and she absolutely refuses. Karlach would rather die than be subject to Zariel's cruel whims again. And the moment you reach Act 3, this decision becomes her very own sword of Damocles. And all of her suffering, every last bit of misery that she faces, is all caused by Lard Enver Gortash. The one thing that every Origin companion character has in common, aside from their malicious little eyeball passenger, is that they're each a victim of either abuse, exploitation, or both. Whether it's from an uneven power dynamic, a result of their cultural conditioning, or in the case of both Karlach and Astarion, horrendous abuse and exploitation, each of them has someone in their past or their present that acts as a source of their pain, whether it's Mizora taking advantage of Will's desperation to save his home to coerce him into a truly unfair deal, or the Sharon Temple kidnapping Shadowheart and brutally reconditioning her into a follower of their dark goddess. And the story goes out of its way to paint each companion's abusers as the worst monsters to exist. Hell, you don't even have to look at the main cast to prove my point on this. If you've played this game and paid attention to the narrative, you may have noticed that the writers pull a cheeky little trick where the actual literal monsters are given less weight than the evil people of the game. And the reason for that is actually very simple. It's far more effective. As much as this is a story of evil gods and destructive alien empires, at its heart, Baldur's Gate 3 is a story about people. And the thing about storytelling is that the bigger the stakes get, the more the audience is distanced from them. As much as people may like to pretend otherwise, the most effective storytelling is always told on a personal level. And one of the things I absolutely love about this game is that, despite the main quest being stop the evil gods and the assimilation and transformation of the entire world, the main focus is always very intimate and personal, with greater importance on these small character details. But a side effect of this is that the literal monsters just sort of don't mean anywhere near as much as the actual people you fight, because the monsters are just following their nature, but the people are choosing to do evil. Which, to be clear, is the opposite of a problem. It's actually why the story works so well. As awful as gnolls and phase spiders may be, you can't really begrudge them for what they do because they're essentially wild animals. Ogres are just big and stupid, and shadows are just corrupted souls. They might be evil aligned, but they don't choose evil. They largely lack the capacity to choose between good and evil. Even the Mother Brain, which is the final boss of the game and the ultimate mastermind behind everything, is ultimately just doing what it was created for. It's an absolute threat, yes, but it's also not a person. You could honestly replace it with a Tarrasque or a magical hurricane and lose very little. But Gortash, Orin, Ketheric, you couldn't simply replace them with a big dragon and have it be the same. Each of them is a person whose choices shaped the story. Each of them chose evil, and Gortash is the worst of them all. I will never understand the people who wanted Larian to let them romance Gortash. Not just because he's the single most evil individual in the game, and not just because he's fucking ugly, but because of what he did to Karlach. You spend so much time with her, learning about her pain and isolation, and just how much he fucked up her entire life. And so by the time you actually meet the asshole, if you have any sense of empathy and like Karlach at all, you want the bastard dead almost as much as she does. But the moment you walk in, he completely dismisses her. He doesn't even care. And of course you can't risk fighting him yet, but when you do confront him, when Karlach finally has his attention, this is all he has to say to her.
It's hard to keep a good woman down, isn't it, Karlach?
I don't know. You managed it for a solid decade.
I never meant to harm you, dear. Merely to help you realize your vast potential.
You sent me to the hells. You let Zariel take my heart, as though any of it was yours to give away.
The greater good, Karlach. Something I wouldn't expect you to understand.
You know, if a guy hurt one of my friends and then spoke to her like this, I would make sure that he never spoke again. And guess what? That's exactly what I did. But more importantly, I want you to pay attention to this next part because it's important.
I'm sorry you feel wronged by how things ended between us all those years ago. But now we must look to the future.
You make it sound like we were lovers. Or friends. But that wasn't it. I trusted you. I respected you. It was my job to protect you. And that's what I did. I was so young. I didn't recognize evil when I saw it. When you turned on me, I was too dumbstruck to realize what was happening. No way he'd hurt me, I thought.
Hey, so this is where we get into really heavy subject matter. So if you aren't comfortable listening to a discussion on these topics, skip to the on-screen timestamp. You've been warned. What Gortash put Karlach through, and I want to stress that I do not say this lightly, is about as analogous to rape as you can get. The betrayal by a man she trusted, the fundamental and horrific violation of her body. Karlach is, and again I need to stress the weight with which I say this, essentially a rape survivor. And Larian understands this, which is why they have, on every occasion, said no to any and all potential romances with Gortash. Not just because it would fuck up the story, but can you imagine allowing players to sleep with their party member's rapist? The thing about Gortash is, even if you stripped him of all his political and divine and mechanical power and just made him some guy, he would still be the guy who abused Karlach. The uncomfortable truth is that most abusers are just some guy. I think that there's this sort of collective idea of an abuser as like this slimy man with a wife beater who reeks of beer and is twice the size of his victim. But the truth of the matter is that abusers come in all shapes and sizes, and the way they abuse people comes in too many forms to count. Any random some guy can be an abuser, because all it takes to be an abuser is for someone to realize they can wield power over another person and use that to hurt them. And I don't think people realize just how ubiquitous it is. It's in the teacher that yells at a student in front of the entire class, knowingly making them a laughingstock. It's in the sister that hits her brother whenever she's mad about something because she knows he won't hit her back, because if he does, their dad will beat him, and so she can just keep getting away with it. It's the mom who screams at her kid that they need her a lot more than she needs them. It's the dad that destroys his daughter's belongings when she misbehaves to send the message of, hey, I broke this, I can break you too. And we see this all throughout the game, not just in the quests of the main characters. Sure, it's abuse how Cazador tortured and neglected and sexually exploited Astarion, but it's also in Kagha sicking a snake on Arabella for touching the Sylvana statue. It's in Mystic Carrion exploiting and tormenting the zombies he's risen. It's in Lororican berating and beating Roland just because he can, and because Roland has nowhere to go. and no one else to turn to. These are all people who have chosen to commit cruel acts against those without the power to resist them. And it's evil. It's one of the simplest and most horrendous evils you can commit against another person. And Gartash is one of the very worst. This is why, whenever I play this game, I always ensure Karlach gets the final blow on him. Because after everything she's been through, the absolute least she deserves is to kill her abuser. Remember what I said earlier about Karlach only ever lashing out at the party once? Well, that one time is right after you kill Gartash. Because while it's true that anger is the brain's way of responding to injustice, it's also often used for another purpose, to cover up other emotions. Emotions that you're not ready to deal with. Shame, sorrow, anger is often used as a defense mechanism against having to embrace these feelings. And this is something Karlach is definitely guilty of, but the emotion she's covering up is fear. The thing about Karlach is that despite claiming she's willing to die instead of return to Avernus, it's not something she's willing to think about. And while her anger is entirely justified, and I'd even argue righteous in nature, it's also something that allows her to hide from that fear. Karlach's zest for life and everything in it is genuine, but it's also something that allows her to distract herself from the cruel truth of her situation. Karlach is constantly running from the fact that she's dying, and who could blame her? It's not cowardice to want to live, to look away from the inevitability of death. But once Gartash is done, when she no longer has her desire for revenge to act as a buffer between her and her fears, reality crashes down on her, and it's far too much to take.
So Gortash is nothing more than a pile of flesh? Same as the rest of us? I feel like I should laugh, but just too goddamn tired. Is that it then? Killed the bastard who ruined my life, and now I crawl into a corner and die? Am I fucking missing something? I'm beyond overwhelmed. I'm finished. He's dead. And he's no fucking sorrier now than he was before. What was the point? I'm still dying. I'm dying. I'm going to die. Don't say that. Say you found some way to fix me. That now Gortash is dead, I'll get my heart back. My heart. It was mine. And they took it. I'm going to be as dead as Gortash any day now. Any moment. And what then? Off to the City of Judgment to waste into oblivion? Into the dirt to get eaten by maggots? Is that it for me? Is that fucking all? And you'll just keep going, won't you? Watching the stars, warming your hands on the campfire, dancing, eating, making fucking love all night. All of it, all of it! That's my reward for everything I suffered. That's why I survived 10 years of torment. The fighting, the clawing, the loneliness, the fucking loneliness. All of it so I could rot. Because the person I trusted the most gave me away to the devil. It isn't fair. I don't want it like this.
It's not fair. It's not fair that after everything she's been through, Karlach still has to die. It's so horribly fucking unfair that this is her reward for surviving. Her desire for vengeance has been what's kept her going for so long, and now that she's got it, it ultimately rings hollow. Gortash isn't any sorrier, and she's still going to die. Except now she's burnt out, empty, What does she even have left? Well, she has you. Even if you don't romance her, you've been with her the entire time. You've been her friend, her source of strength. And as bad as everything is, and it is bad, the one thing she has is that she's not alone anymore.
Would you believe it if I said I'm all right? You know, soldier, we're so fucked. The Dark Three are trying to consume the Sword Coast. We've still got tadpoles in our eyes, and I've got a ticking time bomb in my chest. I'm not sure anyone has ever been more fucked than this. And yet, we're fine. In this moment, we're fine. Here I am. There you are. Breathing, talking, even laughing if we want. Is it very precious to say that despite it all, I'm happy? In that case, there's something I wanted to ask you. Will you stay with me when it's time for me to go? I think I can do anything if you're there. Even die. Thank you. Now, enough tragedy, I'm not gone yet, and our schedule is packed with important heroics, isn't it? Plus, if I cry anymore, I'm gonna run out of tears and start leaking motor oil. Thanks for everything, soldier. I'm extremely glad to be in this thing together.
Karlach has finally confronted her inevitable death, and she's decided that, in the time she has left, she wants to spend it with you. Living, fighting, saving her home. She can do it all so long as she has you at her side. She can do anything. She can face the Netherbrain. She can face her death. She can even live.
That's the one thing I can't beat, isn't it? I wanted to live in my city with my friends. But life is for the living. And I saw... Goodbye, son. Goodbye, sea. Goodbye.
No, stop. I won't allow this. Karlach, you're coming with me. Back to Avernus. We can't let her die. Not like this. Not now.
Will won't let it end like this, and you can choose to join her too. I did, every time. And with you and our Will by her side, she no longer has anything to fear, and hell will never experience anything like the fury of Karlach unleashed.
It worked. My engines calmed down. I shouldn't have let you come here. This isn't going to be easy, you know. Zariel's going to come at us with everything she's got. Gods, like clockwork. They'll be on us soon, but there's just enough time. Thought I was done with these. But then, there was you lot. Imps are fast, but careless. Don't let them tire you out, just get rid of them. And don't forget, you asked for this. Better let these fuckers know I'm back. And this time, I'm not alone.
Six months later, when you're called back to the material plane for a night of celebration by Withers, Karlach reveals there may finally be a solution, blueprints, and a forge where you might be able to fix her engine once and for all. Karlach may finally find her way home. She may finally be free. She may finally get to live the life that was stolen from her. But either way, she'll never be alone again. Thank you for watching, and a special thanks to my Patreon supporters for helping keep the lights on, especially Lustrous Lizard, Owen Oofs, and Hope's Fate. Their support helps ensure that I'm able to keep making videos like this, and I could not be more thankful. I've wanted to make this video for a long time, but there's always been something else to work on. But with Halloween coming up, I can't think of a better time to talk about my favourite devil. I really do love Karlach, and I'm so glad I got to talk about her for as long as I did. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing, and comment down below who your favourite companion was. I might be doing Astarion next, though I'm not entirely sure on that just yet. I've heard some people claim that I Want to Live is specifically his song, but I honestly think it fits all of the companions really well. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed listening to me gush about the cool muscle lady, and I hope you have a truly lovely day. Bye.